All right, well, today is a pretty typical day in my life here in an eco-village and doing homesteading. Usually the night before, I will set up a to-do list for the next day, and depending on the weather, priorities, the time of season, that will determine what I do any day. I don't have a 9 to 5 job. My schedule is pretty flexible. I'm trying to grow my own food. I'm trying to work on a lot of different projects here that make me income, and then also a lot of projects that I just like to do because I want to do them and want to live my life and be happy. Today I'm doing a lot of things. It's a nice sunny, cool day, and I have plans to harvest a bunch of stuff from the garden. The basil needs to be harvested, and so I'm going to be doing that and dehydrating it. I also have some wheat berries that I was given, and so that was the inspiration for making the next batch of bagels. And so I'm going to be grinding those wheat berries and then making bagels a little bit later on. So stick around if you want to see me in a typical day for me at Dancing Rabbit Eco Village. Usually the first thing I do every morning is empty my dish rack. I wait until the end of the day to wash my dishes. I do have to wash dishes from time to time, at least once a day, and I don't have a dishwasher, so I do it all by hand with cold water, although I do heat up the soapy water that I use to wash off the dishes, but then I rinse and I put them in my dish rack here. I collect all my water off my roof and only have cold water in my house. This season we've gotten such regular rain I haven't had to supplement my water supply with county water, which is grid water, but I do have that as a backup if needed. Some years it'll be very dry in the hotter part of the summer, and I'll fill up my cistern when it gets low with county water. But one reason I do rainwater catchment is that it limits the amount of water I use. I have to think about what kind of rain we're getting and whether I have the water to do certain things. But overall, the sky provides enough rain. Apparently with climate change in the last 30 years, the rain in our area has been increasing. But this could change at any time, and predictions are that the middle of the country, where we are, will be more like a desert in the future. Today is a lot of garden-related stuff because the season is in full swing. The days are long and hot, and the garden is producing like crazy. I have a method of mulching my beds that means I don't have to spend time weeding much. It's a bit of work at the front end, but then the rest of the season the mulch holds the moisture and keeps down the weeds. This is how, as one person, I can maintain large areas of garden. Of course, sometimes I let a bed go, and you can see what the rest of the garden would look like if I didn't mulch. I looked out and saw that my basil plants were starting to send up flower spikes, something they do when they get to a certain size. Then it's time to trim them and renew their shoots. I thought about pesto, but I've still got some to eat from last year, so I decided to dehydrate. Morning is always the best time to harvest when the leaves are still full of moisture. It's also the best time to harvest because it gives me all day to dehydrate them in the solar dehydrator. I built this dehydrator a few years ago. Check out the video if you want to see that process. After harvesting the basil, I went on to some other crops. I let my shelling peas go to seed because I wanted to refill my stocks of seed. Peas are so easy to save the seeds of because they don't cross easily with other varieties, meaning they'll stay true to variety year after year, even without isolation from other varieties. I also like to plant snow peas, and I'll be harvesting some of those and saving the rest for seed. This variety, Emerald Archer, is what's known as an aphelia type. These are grown commercially in fields and don't need trellising. They have these extensive tendrils that grip onto each other to form a mat. Next year, I'd like to plant an entire untrellised bed, and I should have the seeds to do it. Then I can put up a lot of frozen shelled peas. I love them in stir fries and samosas. Some other crops I'm harvesting are spring carrots. These carrots look good, but they always have some carrot maggot fly tunnels on them at this time of year. The fall carrots don't get the maggot flies. And these are some crystal wax early onions. I try to plant different onion varieties to fill the season with onions. By the time I finish my storage onions from the previous year, I have walking onions, which are the first in spring. Then these early bulb onions, and finally when these finish up, I should have some of the storage onions ready to go. This way I can have homegrown onions year-round. There must have been a mix-up at the seed company because these were supposed to be golden beets. But they're so delicious and sweet, just steamed without anything else on them. I don't care what color they are. I'm keeping these tomatoes trained in their cages for maximum productivity. These concrete reinforcement wire cages are probably over 10 years old and they're still going strong. Definitely the best method for minimal work, indeterminate garden tomato plants. I'm going to plant a lot of peas next year, shelling peas. I didn't have so many this year because I'm saving them all for seed, or most of them. But I love shelling peas. I love harvesting them, using them, and freezing them. And now I got tons of seed for next year. Processing the basil for drying takes a lot of time, but this load of basil will definitely last me at least until next year. I used to dehydrate in an electric dehydrator, but with this simple solar dehydrator, I can dry huge amounts of produce and without the draw on my electrical system. An electric dehydrator uses in the thousands of watt hours. The solar dehydrator requires no input of electricity. I still have a few starts left to plant out, some foxgloves and sweet potato slips. I also started some jackfruit trees to bring back to Florida with me in the fall. The Moonglow pear tree is loaded with fruit this year.
There's a lot more in here than I thought there were. I thought I had thinned these out. There's just so many.
The cicada hatch has meant more fire blight than other years because the clouds of insects spread disease easily from tree to tree. Plan today is to make some bagels. I have some of these wheat berries that I think are einkorn wheat. friend of mine gave them to me, and they got them in France. They say Grands de Petite Aperture Bio. I don't speak French in any way, and I've never learned like the pronunciation of French words is a complete mystery to me, so sorry if I butchered that. But anyways, these are like these wheat berries, and I found this grain mill in our common house. I remember people used to use this a lot when Sandhill used to grow wheat on their land, and then we could buy actual wheat berries that had been grown locally. Nobody grows these kind of grains anymore here, but the mill still exists, so I'm going to try to mill this up. If you don't know much about this this kind of wheat, or these kinds of wheat, I don't know if there's more than one, but it's kind of a more ancient version of wheat. So it's supposed to be healthier, and obviously has more genetic diversity. I don't think it's as productive as the more modern varieties of wheat are, so it's super expensive. I guess there's different levels of fine or coarse. Oh yeah, there's just a little couple of seeds or something, maybe a rock. Ooh, that's not good. See how full we are. Ooh, look at that. That's a lot of flour. Okay, I'm gonna go dump this out. See ya. Alright, so I'm done milling this flour, and there's quite a bit of it. I mean, I don't know how many cups this is, but this is way more than I would need to make a batch of bagels. But I've got all this for another time, and it's pretty amazing. That mill is incredible, to be able to take wheat berries that potentially you grew and then just mill this much flour in such a short time. Pretty incredible. Anyways, glad I was able to make use of this bag of wheat berries. You know, I did try to plant some of these wheat berries just to see, or sprout them just to see if they were still alive, so I could potentially plant some of this, but none of them came up, none of them sprouted. So I think they're just several years old and they're probably dead. But the flour tastes the flour tastes fine. So I don't think it's rancid. So should be good. Up to 4. Got a total of 7 cups of flour for this. That's 4. How much of this do I want to do? Maybe I'll do like 2.5 cups of this. It's 640 milliliters, I think. Milliliters, not liters. I'm gonna put 3 tablespoons of this sugar in. That'll give the yeast a little something to eat while it's reproducing. It's too hot. And it's too hot already. You might have to let that cool down now, because I got distracted. Let that yeast rehydrate. That's definitely what I'd call active yeast. Already bubbling like crazy. Let's add some of this flour, and we'll get a sponge going here. Ooh. And get this yeast really charged up so that when we mix up the dough, it's just going to go nuts, rise really fast. But this is all we're going to need for now. Alright, so 15 minutes later or so. Pretty active, even with the salt in there. I don't really like to spend an extraordinary amount of time on mixing dough and waiting for it to rise and all that stuff. I want to make it as quick as possible, and yeah, because I just find that it works fine. I worked at a place called Nature's Bakery in Madison, Wisconsin for about 5 years in my 20s and learned a bit about mixing dough and baking bread. It was a cooperative bakery, so we were all owners as well as workers. That's where I got my first experience in accounting and bookkeeping and running a business. It actually just went out of business last year after over 50 years in business making organic whole grain baked goods. It was a radical model for business ownership and workers' rights. It was sad to see it go, but because it was a cooperative and we were all part owners, I still owned shares in the business, and when they folded, I got a pretty sizable check for my time put in from what was left after the business was wrapped up. All the old bakers from 50 years of business came together to make sure the business was ended legally and its assets were distributed properly to those who had made it work for so long. Just imagine any other kind of business doing something like that for its workers. It was a good run for Nature's Bakery, providing inspiration for many and delicious products for the Madison area. Some molasses in there and some sugar. Not sure exactly what the baking soda does. That is what it looks like. The last round. Toppings on them. Probably gonna do salt and sesame seeds just because I don't have everything bagel topping. Alright, I gotta actually turn this on. They turned out a little bit overdone, but they were still delicious and the crust was perfect. These are as good as the best bakery bagels I have had. Not grocery store bagels, which are usually pretty questionable, but if you got them at a good bagel bakery. I still haven't perfected cream cheese, though I can make a mean Neufchâtel, and Chèvre is pretty easy. It's later in the day now, and the basil is mostly dried. Unfortunately, clouds rolled in and put the damper on the dehydrating, so I had to finish them up inside. Fortunately, I had a cooling oven after baking the bagels, so I put them in there to take advantage of the last little bit of heat. So at the end of a typical day like this, I might go to potluck, put on a nice shirt to go to potluck, crack open a homebrew, And then after potluck, just kind of relax, take it easy for the rest of the night, and then start all over again tomorrow morning. Hope you enjoyed joining me on this typical day of Ecovillage life, homesteading, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, share and give a like to the video, and we'll see you next time.